Today it's my pleasure to welcome Susana Rusch, my friend, NVC trainer and writer and the coach. And it's such a pleasure to see you, Susana, and great to have this talk with you. And I would just like to hear something from you about yourself, because I find that kind of interesting to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you, Ivana. It's likewise. It's very nice to see you as well, with the adventures we have had together and the beautiful trainings we gave together, and the learning I got from that, by the way. So, talk a little bit about myself. So, I am stationed in the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands, and I train here, and I trained well, pretty much around the world before COVID. And now I'm taking it easy because I doubt about how I contribute to climate change, and I don't want to fly that much. And I started having interest in nonviolent communication after I did a training myself. It was a training, it was called Authentic Communication. And a very small part of it was nonviolent communication. Since I just make a jump back in time. Since my childhood, since I started studying, I had problems with my mood. It was like I was either sky high and in love with life, etc., or I was totally down and depressed and I don't know, frustrated and everything. There seemed to be nothing in between. And so I struggled with depression, and later some psychiatric labels were added to that. And the tendency used to be that they would love to give pills, and then, you know, hush, hush, you take your pills and everything will be all right. And I couldn't stand that. I thought already as a student, I studied architecture back in the days, and I thought I want to go to the source of all of this, and nobody could tell me. And in those days, trauma was not very well known. So like 20 years later, I discovered Marshall's work with this authentic communication training, and I started reading his book. He came to the Netherlands. He had a talk and a one-day workshop in Rotterdam in the end of 2006 or 2007. And I was impressed. I was totally impressed, but I was more impressed by his book, because there, I at the end of his book, I read this his words about how he dealt with depressed people, and he says in the book that he is not interested in labels, but in what do depressed people want? What do you want? He asked them when he was a psychologist. And he writes in the book that they don't know. They don't know what they want. They just have a lot of self-accusation and judgments about themselves. So I thought, bingo, this is it. This is the answer to my question. This is the source I want to go to. And he gave it in the book. So that was my, like, I sort of got a toolkit to heal myself. And that was so wonderful that I decided I want to, you know, give it to everybody else, pass it on. So that was the initiation.
Wow.
I think that is, yeah.
Yeah, so the direction you took was actually very much connected to your own healing.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. And of course it took time, a lot of time. But and it was not the only thing I did, but in the everyday life, with every conversation and every conversation with myself, it was the most practical healing tool and very effective. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. So you mentioned like different types of conversations with yourself and with others. And that brings me to the question, how has your take on like dealing with maybe stressful situations or conflict evolved over the years?
I think dealing with stress or conflict or coming up conflict has to do a lot with how I am inside myself, how my inner space is, and how present I can be. And So the less I get triggered, the easier it becomes to deal with conflict, or that it's almost coming conflict, like approaching conflict, something like that. Yeah.
So I'm hearing that the more you are connected to yourself in your everyday life, the less you get triggered and the easier it gets to be able to deal with conflict.
Yeah, maybe it's connected to myself. Maybe that is the word. It's also, I don't even know if there is a self there. So it's just being present. Yeah.
Being present. Yes.
Yeah. And that is, I think, because of working so much with Marshall's nonviolent communication model. In my personal case, what helped me a lot was translating my judgments about myself and people around me into feelings and needs. And I think because of my background, because of the trauma, I was not really good at feeling. I didn't really dare to feel, and but because the feeling words, where I could mention them from my head, like I don't know, fear or anger or irritation. It was kind of safe to mention them here, and then it could sink down and connect to what was going on here. So I dared to feel more by mentioning the feeling word. So that was for me very, very confronting, but also rich, and I learned a lot from it. And yes, I got more connected to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear that with the approach, as you were getting to know nonviolent communication, so it was helpful for you to first come in touch with the language, with the names for the feelings, and from there it could sink like deeper into you. It seemed like that was a way that worked well for you.
It was safe.
Yeah.
It was safe. Yeah.
And
I could totally not feel the subtle feelings. It was all like sky high. As I said before, it was either sky high or deep down, and there was nothing in between, I thought. But this became more clear when I practiced the feeling words. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then connecting them to the needs was like, yeah, that's my source. Yeah. I take responsibility. Yeah. But now I think I did that already, but now I had words for it. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm also very curious whether you have experienced some very interesting, like memorable moments when you, with nonviolent communication, that were sort of interesting and fresh and new for you.
Yeah, I have some moments stuck in my mind that were really, I had to remind myself almost this is really, I didn't do this in the past. But at the same time, in those moments itself, it was kind of natural, but of course it wasn't. I grew to those moments. So one example is that we were building this house where I'm sitting now. We were making kitchen floor of concrete, and this was on a Saturday morning. And the thing that makes the mill that makes the concrete, it makes noise, and it stinks and it smells, etc. And I had put some papers in the box, the mailbox of the people, my neighbors, but I had forgotten one. I had forgotten one neighbor, thinking this is too far away. They won't bother about the noise, etc. So that morning I heard one of the neighbors, one woman, really sort of shouting and really angry towards one of the building men who had nothing to do with it because we hired him. So I stepped outside with my hand out like this to shake hands. And I told her, oh, good morning, my name is Susana and I live here, and this is nothing to do with this man. So I'm curious what you have to say, and it sounds you're really not happy with what is going on, and I'm so sorry that I didn't give you a little piece of paper. And so good that you do this. Thank you, because I really prefer people to say things in my face and not gossip about it around my back. So thank you for your honesty. And I don't know what she said, something like, oh yeah, yes, oh yeah, it's a bit over the top what I did, isn't it? And I wasn't looking for an answer like that, but I really noticed at that moment, maybe this is not the answer you're looking for, but at that moment I realized that that I couldn't have done that like 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier, whatever. Yeah.
So the way you approached her in that moment, which was an outcome of years of you practicing nonviolent communication,
yeah.
With that welcome and with that curiosity, that led to a shift in her. And maybe she couldn't continue in the way she was going to, but was able to self-reflect a bit more.
Yeah. And I noticed that it's that the power of appreciation is really huge. But of course, it's out of the heart. It's not like it's not a trick. I really mean it. But I noticed that more and more.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in my trainings, I notice it as well. Of course, some people do have resistance, or some things happen, or they just come there with resistance, and it's really a wonderful play for me to play with that and to notice. Okay, what do I want to? Is it okay for me for me that they are in resistance as long as they want to be in resistance and they don't get the training? Or so there's different examples of that as well, which is
yeah, last time I heard you say that without the resistance it's almost boring, that it brings some kind of aliveness.
Yeah. But nowadays it's almost boring without resistance.
Yeah.
It's maybe a bit over the top, but I've had some beautiful moments with resistance in groups where finally the resistance breaks. There was a group in Bosnia-Herzegovina of almost all ladies and one man, and I trained there for a few days, and there was this one woman who was really obviously in resistance. She was silent, she had like a grumpy face, and I'm almost amused by that, like how long is she going to hold that? And and then in one break, in the second day, I went to her in the break and I said, I noticed that it seems to me that it's difficult for you, or maybe you have resistance, or whatever it is. I just want to tell you that for me, it's totally free what you do and how you feel, and I really hope that you get out of this training the most out of this training. And I'm guessing that if you're feeling like this, it's difficult to get the most out of the training. So feel free, or if something is bothering you, feel free to say it in the group, just whatever way. You don't need to say it the beautiful, perfect NVC way. Just if you have judgment, just tell them, I can hear all of it. But I just hope that you have a good time here and you can learn. So after that, she started to say something, of course, and the whole group notices. The whole group notices resistance and that kind of stuff. So she started saying something like, I have the feeling that everything in MVC trainings has to be good and nice and honey and wonderful, and everybody is happy. Well, it's not. I'm angry. She started sharing things, and I saw the whole group like, finally.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I did or what I said anymore. I don't remember, but I think, yeah, I did. I think I asked her, I told her again my appreciation, and that it was such an honor for me to see her truly, to be able to truly see her, and that if she was open to hear something from the group, because possibly it does something to people in the group. She says, yes, okay. And then people started crying. They got up and they hugged her. It was just like, it was going the other way around, like inside out, the group. And so it resulted in total connection, really so much connection that in the end we were all silent. We couldn't say, there was nothing to say, there was only connection. Those are those golden minutes, in golden moments in trainings. That's like, wow, what's happening here? It's like, okay.
Yeah, those are very beautiful, precious moments. And I imagine how you're welcoming and encouraging and being curious about the resistance actually released energy for the whole group. So one person can represent that something that's probably a bit stuck in the group, and then it can, through expression, it can also release.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I'm also curious how this practice has maybe enriched or transformed the way you handle situations with the people that are close to you. Some of us struggle how we cope with our children, with our partners. And I'm also curious, like, how we can bring peace to ourselves and around us as a way of cultivating it.
Yeah. Well, that's a very deep question to me, because so the way I when I started learning NVC, my son was around 10, and certainly in my relationship with him, I totally applied it, like in the sense of being very honest and learning a lot from him about my feelings. So that has brought me a lot of honesty and a very clear, straight connection with him, that no loose ends, no, it's very, very pure. And then to the other generations, like my parents and my brother. So to direction my parents, it's difficult to answer, but anyway, it has, I think NVC has brought me, but also life experience has brought me, I guess, wisdom in when to say something or not. And most of the time it's not about saying things. It has not been about saying things. So that kind of honesty, it doesn't, in some cases, honesty doesn't bring good stuff. It can trigger a lot of pain. So for example, in relationship with my mother, she died in 2019, but I purposely decided to just not say some things, because I'm telling myself, I know her character, and that she wouldn't be able to, she probably would have taken it personally. And I don't think that would have enriched her life. So instead, I started at a certain moment to touch her more, to caress her more. So to express my love in another way, and closeness, and that kind of stuff, tenderness. But in words, it was sometimes difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's part of attunement to different people, like finding the ways that we connect. And for some people, it's not through words, it's through a different channel.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me about an interesting example when you were training for the police, for a group of policemen in the Netherlands. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, that was hilarious. It was a 2-day introduction training for a group of 8 policemen. This was men. Usually it's men and women, but somehow it was only men. It doesn't matter. So they have the I don't know the name in English, but they are not the policemen that are on the street, but just one level higher. So if shit breaks out, they have to make tough decisions in cities. So this is close to the city of Rotterdam in Holland, and I went there for 2 days. And the second day in the morning, so I ask usually, how was it? Did you wake up with something, or tell me? And one of them was in resistance. He was like, yeah, it's so, you know, it's like so vague, and it's like sometimes it's like baked air, and I don't know what to do with it. And then another guy, one of his colleagues said, oh, he is always a little bit direct. Like he wanted to cover his partner. But I said, no, tell me. I'm curious. I'm interested. What is it exactly that you want to say? This is a little fly here. And I started asking more about the observation. Actually, what was it exactly that he was irritated or about, or he had resistance? And because he connected my training to being vague and being baked air. This is a Dutch expression. And zweverig. Zweverig is like floating. That's also what people say. It's so floating. It's not down to earth, you know. And I didn't know what he meant. But I used little cards with colors on the floor. I put it on the floor with the steps of the model, of NVC model, which to me is very concrete. You know, you see it, you step on it, you use your body. But
you connect to the ground also.
Connected to the ground, all these things. So I asked him, so what is the vague thing? What is the floating thing? And he said, oh, there are these cards on the floor. Anyway, he had some personal resistance towards cards on the floor, the things I put on the floor. That was for him, he didn't need that. So that got clear. And then I asked him, so just for my curiosity, yesterday we did an exercise together. It was a listening exercise. And in the end, we gave each other pieces of paper with need words on them. Now, if there is something that you cannot touch, it's a need. So I'm just very curious, how was this exercise for you? He said, oh no, that was wonderful. It was very nice, but it was very vague. So I had my clarity. I just had I don't know, some personal, how do you say that word? Irritation around cards on the floor. And I told him, and all of them, you know, guys, I just want to make this a day where you can all learn, and I don't need to follow the program that I have. So please tell me what you want to practice, and we do it, because I just want to contribute to you guys. So we made a program, and we did the rest of the day. And at the end of the day, I wanted to end with sharing appreciation. So they shared some beautiful appreciation to each other, with feeling most need words and the observation, of course. And then I said that I was kind of blown away by their job, that the things they do as policemen and women, seeing dead bodies and dealing with difficult people and violence and that kind of stuff. I told them I'm really amazed that this really fulfills my need for safety, knowing that you guys do this. And then they all went to me and they said, well, and the way you dealt with our colleague here, with his resistance, that is really blowing us away. So that really fulfills, one of them said, it fulfills my need of inclusion and connection. And I said, oh, really? And I was a bit surprised by that. So I asked, so is it new for you to notice that somebody deals this way with a kind of resistance? And they said, oh yeah, when we have trainings here and somebody is making a bad joke, the trainer can say something like, well, if you do like this, just go to the coffee machine and don't come back anymore. Like a very, that's so strange to me to hear this. But to finish the story, so I gave my appreciation for their work, and then this guy, that was in resistance in the beginning, he invited me to come and join them for a day in their police work. So that's what I did.
Yeah, so that was quite a turnaround there. And also I hear that your appreciation is also something that opened up more space for you to get some understanding from them, like how it works there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, appreciation is really the highest vibration. It's so important. Yeah.
And I'm also curious, Susana, how does spirituality support your work?
Well, I think that is the basic thing in my trainings, spirituality, although I will never say that word out loud. I do start my trainings, practically all my trainings, with a moment of silence, and I add some words to it, which really have to do with spirituality and being present, that kind of stuff. And then also, it just happens in trainings. It's always there, but it kind of comes to the surface. Like the example I gave before with a woman in Bosnia-Herzegovina that was in resistance and how that melted away. And then the group was kind of waking up or really coming together, really, really connected. And there was this natural silence because nothing has to be said anymore. It's just like we were totally connected, totally in silence. And for me, that is true spirituality. And it's interesting for me in the role as a trainer, how to deal with that, with delicate moments, because of course I also want to go on with the training. So after some silence, after some time, I say the language of God is silence, all else is hopeless translation. That's a quote of Rumi. So I have different things in my pocket to use when those moments come, or people start crying or whatever. Or sometimes I start singing a song and people sing with me. So I don't know if that's spirituality, but it's certainly a lot of connection. And then also the disappearing of time. So the more people get connected, the less time they experience. So my British colleague, I just forgot her name, but anyway, she says it's playing with clock time and flow time. And that is another very interesting thing. So when there is a lot of flow time, clock time disappears, and I play with it, I think, like every trainer. And that's really beautiful. And then it's almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon and participants say, what? I thought it was 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Time disappeared. That's connection. That is really touches spirituality for me.
And sounded also like touching or enabling some healing to happen through that connection in the group.
Yeah. So how do you experience it? The same?
How do I experience it? Yeah, I think like in those moments when we get connected in the group, I think some things can come into like more coherence, as you mentioned, with like opening up the space for the resistance and the connection that happened afterwards. I think that in such moments, certain things can come into their place. And that's part of healing, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. That is why groups are so important. I mean, we once in our lives, we got hurt with other people around us. So we need to notice that we are whole with people around us.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
And I'm also curious, like for the people watching this talk, if you could give some, well, may I say advice or something, like when people want to cultivate more peace in their everyday life, when they want to contribute to this kind of connection, what are some of the simple things that they could make or do?
So I would say go to a training, go to a course of nonviolent communication, because it's in the repetition. It's really in the rehearsal and doing it over again and over again, practicing that things start changing. So that would be my very simple advice. And find a group of people that have the same interest, a sangha or whatever name you want to call it, but other people that also are interested in NVC, so you can share. You can sometimes come together and be in the same kind of gezelschap, same kind of people with the same spirit.
Yeah. So in a supportive environment, I guess, where you also feel welcome, where you can adopt a practice and repeat that with the support of the group in order to maybe transform certain habits or find some new pathways, how to respond to situations.
Communication is really something we do every day. And if we trained ourselves for 40 years to communicate in one way, we need practice to change it. And soften, and how do you say that? Be gentle with ourselves, because it will take time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Susana. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Ivana. We didn't even talk about our own experiences with each other.
Yeah, which is also interesting.
Had some good experiences.
I remember, I do remember one moment that I sometimes talk about in groups, about also related to creativity, because you remember that time when we did a training together in the Czech Republic, and then we had an argument, and then before the training we were wondering how to connect so that we can do it together. And then we were trying different things, and we tried diets, we tried using nonviolent communication, and then in the end what worked was exchanging our judgments about each other, and having a laugh based on that. So sometimes it's not sometimes it can be something like that we don't expect that can connect us.
Absolutely. I have really warm memories of that. And I remember, I think you were the one who really proposed all these things, the diets and exchanging our judgments. And what I recall is that I was shouting at you at the train station. Or what was it? I was really
on the street.
On the street. And you were looking at me with a smile on your face, and I said something like, if you go on smiling and giving me empathy, I'm going to hit you. And that was the start of our time together. And sometimes I share this as well, that because of nonviolent communication, we were able to deal with that in just a few days. I mean, 10 years ago, it would have taken me 10 years to deal with this. Or I would have said, no, Ivana, I will never see her again.
Oh, so I was really lucky. And looking back, I can see that maybe the smile that was triggering for you, that was probably part of my own freeze response, because
that was so learnsome for me. And I think it's nice for people also to notice this, because you were smiling, I was shouting, we were both scared. We both had our own way of dealing with fear. And I learned so much from that, because later I went to the United States to give a training, and I saw a lot of people smiling, and I knew what it meant. So I'm very grateful to you.
Okay, well, I'm very happy.
It was shitty in that moment, but we learned a lot, and we're still connected.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Susana.
You too,
for this talk, for sharing your experience and your knowledge.
Yeah.